Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming today. And today I'll discuss on the topic of what is spiritual growth. So I'll talk about this in three broad parts. So I'll be using this whiteboard to write things. Our topic will be spiritual growth. I'll talk about in three parts what it is, why we should seek it, and how we can actually grow spiritually. So let me start with what spiritual growth is. Before that, I would like to ask you, if say now you're coming to this particular place, you're coming to this temple, you're doing certain practices, say you want to grow spiritually, what is your understanding of spiritual growth? We can have 3-4 answers.
Pray.
Sorry?
Pray.
Pray. Okay.
Faith.
Praying.
Service.
Faith. Yes.
Service.
Okay.
Connecting with higher
Aura.
Connecting with higher self, yeah.
Connecting with higher self. Aura. Aura, that's what you said? Okay, aura. Connecting with higher self.
Self-realization.
Self-realization. That's true.
Stability of mind.
Stability of mind. Humility. Okay.
For your original identity.
Okay, so that's self-realization. Awareness of original identity, you could say. What about consciousness?
Consciousness.
But what about consciousness?
Being conscious of yourself.
We become more conscious of ourselves. Yes, that's quite a good variety of answers, I think. Thank you. So yes, please.
Sattvic association.
So okay, this is more like a means. Sattvic association. If you are in good association, then we'll grow spiritually. So all that you said is true. It's all a part of it. So I'll talk about this in terms of one image. That what is the difference between a person who is spiritually unevolved and a person who is spiritually evolved. For all of us, if a person is here, for a person who is spiritually unevolved, the world is big and God is small. Even if God exists, okay. When I started my spiritual journey about 30 years ago almost, I tried to share with my friends and relatives. So one of my uncles told me, yeah, I believe in God. He's happy there, I'm happy here. So basically, God seems so small as to be more or less irrelevant. Or not very relevant. But spiritual growth means the world becomes small for us and God becomes big for us. So, for a spiritually evolved person, God becomes the more important reality. Now when we say God becomes big, see, God is always the biggest reality. But in our awareness, in our perception, in our decision making, in our mental world, when God becomes bigger, when the pleasure of God, when the satisfaction of God becomes more important than the praise of the world, that is a person who is spiritually evolved. So now, when we do all this, many of the things that you mentioned, humility will result, stability of mind will result, a greater awareness of our own identity will result. Many times, if we are constantly pandering, we're trying to do whatever will please people, then we often lose track of who we are. So we go away from our true identity. So all those are, in one sense, byproducts of spiritual growth. Now, why does this matter? Why should God be bigger than the world for us? 2 reasons. That when the world is very big, the world is characterized by ups and downs. That's just the nature of the world. In Hindi there was a movie, Kabhi Khushi, Kabhi Gum. Or not dumb, gum, it is. But, so this happiness, this stress, those are dualities. And when the world is very big for us, then the result is the dualities of the world, they become even bigger for us. And thus we stay very unsteady. Hmm? Now, when the world becomes small for us, then even the dualities of the world, we don't get affected so much. So one advantage is that when the world becomes small, there is steadiness. That we are not so shaken by the world's ups and downs. And we will see that often a steady person is a reliable person. If you want to do something important, that person is just too shaken by things. That person is too moody. Then we can't count on it. So steadiness is an important virtue even in the material sense. So one result is steadiness. Why we seek spiritual growth is because it will make us steady. But the other is that God is the source of the supreme happiness. From the world also we may get some happiness. But the world's happiness comes and goes. When good things happen, we feel happy. When bad things happen, we feel unhappy. But God is always there with us, within us. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tataha. So we could say there is on one side steadiness and then there is steady happiness. Because once the connection with God is established, that will never be lost. That bond of love means that God is always with us. He's always with us actually, but we don't realize His presence. The more we realize His presence, the more we realize that there is a source of joy always there within us. So it's like if I'm feeling very cold and I have a huge bottle of water with me, then no matter how cold I feel, I can always keep drinking the water. So God is like an endless reservoir of happiness. And when we have a connection with Him, then we have unending happiness with us. So steadiness and happiness. So sthirata and sukha. Steadiness and happiness. These are two among the many results of spiritual growth. But so why we seek spiritual growth? So these two are the shorter parts, but the major part is how do we grow spiritually? So I will base this part on 635 in the Bhagavad-gita, and we'll talk about it also in terms of something from the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. See, I talked about two things over here. See, God is always the biggest reality. But how do we see God? Is He small or is He big for us? So there is the fact that our mind and the impressions in the mind shape our perception of things. So if I am here, I'll just give to understand how spiritual growth actually happens. See, when you come to a temple, you attend some kirtan, you take darshan, you feel good. And maybe many people come there just because it feels good. And that's also good. But there is much, much more available over here. So what happens is, this is the soul, then this is the mind, then you could say this is the body. Now this is the conditioned self. The soul, mind, body, all of this. And then beyond this is the outer world. So now from the outer world, say there is some object over here. So basically from the soul, consciousness comes out. Consciousness, Chaitanya, is the energy of the Atma. So consciousness is, say, like this flashlight. So the flashlight has a source, and from that a beam of light comes out. So the light source is the soul. The light coming out from it is the consciousness. Now from the Atma, the Chaitanya comes out. The Chaitanya comes through the mind and goes to the outer world. And in the outer world, we perceive things. So Chaitanya goes out, seeks information, and then comes back in with that information. So for example, right now you are listening to me. So your consciousness is coming outwards, and you are listening, and then you are processing, hey, this makes sense, this is a little complicated. I came to enjoy, this is exercising my intelligence too much now. So different kind of thoughts might be going on. So what your information is being sought, and then the consciousness comes in. So in one sense, the mind is the transmitter of consciousness. So sometimes the mind, soul, consciousness all are confused. We think it's all the same. So soul is the root of consciousness. It is the place from which the consciousness originates. The mind is the root of consciousness. It is the pathway through which the consciousness goes out to the body and to the outer world. So right now, so I can put it another way. This is the soul. Say this is the body. Then the link between these two is the mind. And through this link, consciousness comes out. Okay, is this color visible? Okay. So consciousness comes out through the mind. So the mind at one level is the transmitter of consciousness, both outward and inward. And that's why when we say somebody is absent-minded, so what happens is, at that time, say the soul is here, the body is here, so the eyes are here, the ears are here, but the mind is somewhere here. And then what happens is, the soul's consciousness is partly going here and partly going here. And say we are hearing a talk, in the talk while we are hearing a talk, our mind goes for a walk. And then if there's some humor, the mind comes running, hey, I also want to laugh. What happened? What happened? So the mind comes running back. So this is where there is distraction. So basically the mind and the soul, the mind and the body need to be in one line for proper perception to happen. So the mind is a necessary transmitter for consciousness. So if the transmitter is off, say, then if I just showed this phone, now if the flashlight may be on, but if the shutter is covered, then what is going to happen is that it's as if the light is not there only. So if somebody's mind is gone somewhere else, the consciousness is not coming to that place. Sometimes you're talking, say, you're talking and the person's eyes are just glazing. Where are you? Come back to earth, come back to earth. You've gone to dreamland, now come back. Then we say like that. So basically the mind is a transmitter of consciousness, and sometimes it transmits properly, sometimes it does not. But the mind is not just a transmitter of consciousness. It is also, this is the key point for how spiritual growth happens, the mind is also a transformer of consciousness. Transformer of consciousness means what? That, again, if you go back over here, this soul is here. Are those of you able to see from here? Okay. So, say the mind is here and the external world is over here somewhere. So now in the mind there are impressions. These impressions are called samskaras. Samskar, the word can also be written in English as samskar. Everybody has some or the other scar in their psyche. And what happens, say from here, suppose somebody is an alcoholic, and say this is a bottle of alcohol. So when the consciousness passes, normally it will just pass linearly. Okay. Normally it would just pass straight. But when they see a bottle of alcohol, it comes, and when it passes through this, that same impression starts becoming huge. So the consciousness, the perception becomes transformed. So somebody might have gone to a party, and if they are alcoholic, they will be talking with someone, even they're talking with their boss. They're thinking, okay, when can I drink? And the boss goes on talking for a long time. After some time, in their mind, their boss' body changes into the bottle of alcohol. So, based on the impressions in our mind, the consciousness that is passing through gets transformed. So, if there are samskaras associated with something, then those perceptions become enlarged. So, if somebody has been bitten by a dog in their childhood, then as soon as they see a dog, that consciousness passes through their mind, and that samskar, they feel scared. Now that dog might be just a tiny sweet poodle, but still they feel fear. Why? Because the samskar is there. Now generally, the way to understand the samskara, whether there is a samskara or not, let's talk about samskar here in a negative sense. Impressions can be positive also, but let's talk about it in the negative sense right now. The presence of a samskara, how do we understand that? So basically, say if somebody is behind me right now and they wanted to talk with me and they tap on my shoulder. Now normally we just gently tap on the shoulder of someone to draw their attention. So if they tap on my shoulder, if I scream, so what happened? I say, how do you know? Actually I had a sprain in my shoulder over here. You touch it causes pain. Oh, okay. So basically, just like if there is some injury in the body, then a small touch causes a strong reaction. So the presence of a samskar is seen by basically what? There is a small stimulus, but there is a large reaction. So we all use this when we are talking with someone and suddenly that person seems to get upset or agitated. Then we may ask, did I touch a nerve? Did I touch a nerve? That means what? Did I trigger something within you that has agitated you? So in general, the way to know what samskaras we have is which stimuli trigger a disproportionate response within us. For some people, if they are very attached to cricket, then as soon as they hear some news about cricket, okay, you know, cricket, Sarva Dharman Parityaj, what happened about cricket now? That's what I want to know, what I want to know. Somebody has no impressions about cricket. You know, in America, if you talk with Americans, say cricket, they think of an insect, not a game. So, basically, if some stimulus triggers a disproportionate response, that indicates that there is a samskar over there. And so, when I said that the world is big and God is small, what that means is, inside our mind, the impressions of the world are a lot. So it could be about wealth, it could be about prestige, it could be about beauty, it could be about power, it could be about position, it could be about so many things. So when the impressions about the world are prominent in our mind, then the world appears very big. So basically, the principle of impressions is something very simple, you know, that whatever we take in takes us in. Whatever we take in takes us in. That means we take in an impression and gradually that impression starts becoming bigger and bigger and bigger till it starts consuming our consciousness. Nobody is born with a bottle of alcohol in their mouth. But they take alcohol. So that is said, first a drinker takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the drinker. So the impressions that we take in, they take us in. They keep growing. So when I talk about this principle of spiritual growth, at one level it applies to everything. So somebody might say come from India to UK. Now India, say football is not a very big. America, UK, I believe football is very big. Isn't it? Now football is the same thing, but when I say it's very big, I'm talking about in terms of how popular it is, how passionate people are about it. So somebody coming from India, for them they may have no much interest in football. But maybe they come to college, they see everybody is passionate about football, they go for a few games, and 6 months later, the same game which they had no interest in, now they're mad, screaming about it. So what happened? The same thing which was very small became big. How did it happen? Whatever we take in takes us in. So whatever impressions we take in, whatever perceptions we take in, they form impressions inside us, and those impressions start shaping our future perceptions, and eventually they start shaping our life itself. So this, whatever we take in, this is a universal psychological principle. And Krishna points to this psychological principle in say 8.5 and 6 when he says Sada tad bhava bhavitaha. whatever is the disposition inside us, that will shape our perception in the future. And this applies at death, this applies also in life. Now, this universal psychological principle can also be applied in bhakti. So when we are practicing bhakti, what do we do? The fundamental principle in bhakti is always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. Now we may say, what is the point of this? What is this about remember Krishna, don't forget Krishna? What is it? What difference does it make? But it is about psychology. See, if we want to change the impressions within us, say somebody is an alcoholic and they want to give up alcoholism. So what is the way? Krishna basically says two things. I said this whole talk is based on 635 in the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna says two principles for changing the impressions in our mind. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. So abhyasa and vairagya. Now these words can be translated in many different ways. But one of the ways is persistence and abstinence. So persistence and abstinence. So if somebody wants to recover from alcoholism, one of the first things that they need to do is stop drinking alcohol, stop going to bars, stop hanging out with people who drink alcohol, especially in places where they're likely to drink alcohol. So abstain from those impressions being reinforced. So there are impressions already inside us. If we further fuel them, they will grow. So abstinence basically starves the inner impressions. So we need to abstain from the thing which we want to weaken, or the thing which we don't want to grow inside us. So abstinence starves the inner impressions. But this alone is not enough. Because I may starve the impressions from outside, but still the impressions are there inside. And they will keep tormenting us. They will keep tormenting us. And that's why what happens is we need to be able to create new impressions. So one of the keys to say giving up alcoholism is that we need to, somebody who is alcoholic, they need to create healthier habits. So they need to find some other way of getting some relief, getting some pleasure, getting some high. So persistence is creates new impressions. So when both of these there, persistence and abstinence, both of them there, that will lead to eventually transcendence. So we need to gently pat ourselves towards transformation. We cannot force ourselves. Willpower is required, but raw willpower is not enough. It's like somebody has disease and somebody has some respiratory tract infection and they feel like coughing. And they say, by willpower, I will not cough. How long can you do that? The cough is going to come. If the infection is there inside the body, it's going to come. If somebody has digestive disorder, they have loose motion, and they say, I am not going to. It's not going to work. Willpower is required, but willpower needs to be used in a refined way. If somebody has a digestive disorder, their willpower needs to be used. Okay, I will not eat any fatty foods. I will not eat any foods which are going to cause a digestive overload to my body. And maybe I'll take this soap, I'll take this medicines. So persistence and abstinence. So willpower is not just raw willpower. Many times when we try to overcome some bad habits, we try to use raw willpower. I'll never do this again. But most of the times it doesn't work. Why? Because we may be wanting to not do it, but the impressions are there inside us. And those impressions will keep proposing, come on, do it, do it, do it. It's so big, it's so wonderful. How can you not do anything about it? So we need to change the impressions within. So persistence and abstinence. So we abstain from the things that we don't want to grow inside us. And we persist in doing the things that will grow the impressions that we want to grow inside us. So now this same principle is applied in bhakti. So persistence is always remember Krishna. Now, abstinence is never forget Krishna. Now, what does this mean? Actually speaking, you may say, I have to function in the world, I have to do my job, I have to take care of my family, I have to do so many things. What does it mean actually to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna? It basically means that Krishna becomes the unifying purpose of our life. I may have a family, I may have a job, I may have many interests and hobbies, but I try to connect all of them with Krishna. So for all of us to grow spiritually, I said that initially God is small, the world is big. We want God to become big and the world small. So this will happen depending on the change of the impressions within us. So what do we need to do? This is the last part I'll talk, and then we can have a few questions if you hear. So persistence. So persistence is for the practices or actions that create devotional impressions within us. So now, when we come to the temple, we take darshan of the deities, we sing kirtans, we sit and hear a class. All this is creating impressions within us. And the stronger the impressions that are there within us, the faster will be the change. Somebody can come to the temple if they just come as a ritual. Oh, why do you come to the temple? Oh, because my parents told me to come to the temple. Every day my mother asked me, did you go to the temple? Every week they ask, did you go to the temple? And we are in the temple, but our mind is not in the temple at all. Our mind is in the TV that we want to watch, our mind is in the pub that we want to go to, our mind is in the party that we want to go to. Then if our mind is not there, then no impressions are going to be formed. Then it's like sometimes people come to a kirtan, it's an ecstatic kirtan, but in an ecstatic kirtan they are completely static. Like they are impressively unimpressed. Because their mind is completely elsewhere, so no impressions are being formed. So persistence is, it's not just physical presence, it's openness of our consciousness, so that the impressions are formed inside us. And especially, we have our devotional practices such as our sadhana. We chant the holy names. Every day, at least for some time, we need to immerse ourselves in God. See, whatever we take in, takes us in. So there is at least some time. We sit down and pray, we sit down and chant, we sit down and study scripture. So meditation, when we talk about this abhyasa, meditation is at one level a process of taking in. When we chant we do mantra chanting. At that time, through the mantra, we are taking in God. God is coming into our consciousness. But mantra chanting is not just about taking in God, it is going into God. What it means is, initially we take God in as one small impression among the many impressions that are coming into our consciousness. But slowly, we start realizing that God is a far bigger reality. And our consciousness enters into God. Our conscious. That's why the perception of the enlightened souls, it is said that yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati, that they see God in everything and they see everything in God. They see God in everything means they're able to actually take God in from everywhere. When they're talking with a person, they see this person is a part of God. And they're talking with that person, but they're also aware of God's presence. So take God in, but they also understand that God, not only is God is situated in everyone, but everyone is situated in God. So at one level, God is one impression that we are taking in. But God is also the biggest reality. So now it is magical if we just try to be prayerful, if we try to be attentive, if we try to be focused in our chanting, in our kirtan, in our hearing of classes, in our taking darshan of the deities. Initially, say you come to this room, the deity is Krishna. There are so many people in this room, there are so many pictures, there are so many things, and the deity on the altar is just one more thing over there. Maybe more attractively decorated. There's one more thing. But as we focus on the deity, we start realizing that this is the biggest reality. In fact, Krishna contains everything. So every day, if we are doing our prayer, our sadhana, at least for a few moments, we need to bring ourselves into that experience of the higher reality. So when that abhyasa is done, then that is what will lead to the transformation of our consciousness. And then for us the vairagya that is needed. The vairagya especially is from the things that agitate and captivate our consciousness. Each one of us has to find out what that is. For somebody, it might be the political news. And some people just, oh, this person did this like this and this person did like that. And people just get so agitated by it. Like politics has become the new religion for many people. Especially in America, the political polarization is so great. In the past, say, people from different religions would not marry each other. Now in America, there was a survey, almost 75% of Democrats and 70% of Republicans. They would say, we would not marry the other person, they're from the other side. So, so politics has become like the new religion. So if politics is what is agitating us, now we may say, I have to be politically aware, okay, true, but regulate it, minimize it, don't get consumed by it. For somebody else, it may be thoughts of money. We all need money in life. But it's one thing to seek money, and the other thing to be, it's one thing to possess money, it's another thing to be possessed by money. So it's one thing to think about money, it's another thing to think only about money, or constantly about money. So the things which particularly agitate and captivate our consciousness, we try to keep a distance from them. So in that way, so whatever makes the world big in our consciousness, we try to keep it away from us. And whatever makes God big in our consciousness, we try to bring it close. And by this dual practice of abhyasa and vairagya, gradually it will start happening for us that Krishna will become the bigger reality and the world will become a smaller reality. And when this happens, the test that this is happening will be that the same thing, the similar kind of problem which previously it had come in my life, I would have been so agitated, so shaken. But now that problem comes, yeah, it's there and I have to deal with it. At this stage, when we are in the spiritually unevolved stage, what would have something which would have not only disturbed us, agitated us, shattered us, something which would have shattered us, now we are just concerned about it. Yeah, it's important. The world matters for me. So some problem, here it may have shattered me when the world is very big and the God is very small. When the world becomes small, that same problem, it will shake me, it will not scatter me. The world's problems are big, but God is far bigger. The world's power to hurt us is great, but God's power to heal us is far greater. So when we come to God also, don't focus on telling God how big the problems are. We come to God, and in the presence of God, we tell our mind how big God is. And when we do that, then our problems, even when we have the problems, see, we may have here, we live in pain, we live in fear, we live in distress. Here, pain may still be there, but we live with pain, not in pain. That's one part of my life, this problem is there, I have to deal with it, but it won't overwhelm us. And that's how the Gita says that even amid the most disturbing situations, we won't be disturbed. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate na adhikam tata yasmin sato dukkhena gurunapi na vichalyate. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. We talked about the topic of spiritual growth. I talked about three broad parts. What is spiritual growth? That is basically, spiritual growth essentially means initially the world is big, God is small. But what happens is, the world becomes big and God becomes small. Now, why spiritual growth? It gives us steadiness in facing the world and gives us happiness which is inexhaustible, which is inalienable from us. Because it is inside us and God never runs out of happiness. So, this is why we seek spiritual advancement. Now the major part of the session was how. So in that I talked about four broad things. First was that whatever we take in takes us in. Whatever impression we form inside us, they shape us. So this is a universal psychological principle. In this I talked about how the soul, the mind, and then the body and the outer world. But the mind is both the transmitter of consciousness and the transformer of consciousness. So whatever is going through it, the samskaras are there. The samskaras change what happens. So now, if we have to change the samskaras within us, so if you want to change the impressions, the key things required for us are basically, it is not just willpower. It is, you could say, refined, not raw willpower, but refined willpower. Refined willpower is directed towards abhyasa. Abhyasa is persistence in doing the thing that will replace the unhealthy thing. Sometimes we focus too much on, oh, I'll not do this, I'll not do this. We focus on abstinence. But okay, I'll not do this, but what will I do instead? That is important. So when there is persistence and abstinence together, it will help us to get to transcendence. Transcendence means, so if an alcoholic stops going to bars, stop hanging out with people who drink at the time when they drink, and that alcoholic also creates a healthier habit. Maybe whenever they feel stressed, whenever they feel lonely, when they feel in pain, they maybe start singing music or hearing spiritual music, hearing kirtans. They create a healthier habit. Then eventually, even if somebody is drinking alcohol, they will transcend it. They will not feel the urge for it. So persistence and abstinence. Now in bhakti, what we do is, for us the abhyasa is associated with the things or the activities that remind us of Krishna's greatness, that Krishna is the largest reality. And vairagya is from the things that make the world seem great to us. So we need to find out what are the things, and we need to individually take responsibility to keep a distance from those things. And the last part I mentioned is that each one of us, the test that we are growing is the thing which in the past would have shattered us. Now we are still not apathetic to it, we're concerned about it. In the past we would have been living in pain. Now we will manage to live, okay, it's one part of my life, I'll deal with it. I will live with pain. And this way, even in this life, we can experience the benefits of spiritual growth. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Your Grace, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Would you like to have
Is there one or two questions quickly?
questions and answers? Anyone have any questions?
Yes, please, there.
Can you explain subconscious?
Subconscious. Well, subconscious basically refers to the impressions that are there inside us which we are not aware of. Say for example, if, as I said, somebody touches my shoulder and I feel pain. That means there's an injury over there. Now I might remember, oh, that time I had fallen on my shoulder, that's how I got the injury. But sometimes I may not remember the injury when I got injured, but I just have that injury. So what is in our subconscious also triggers us. That means again, there is a small stimulus, large response. But those are impressions that happened so much in the past that we are not aware of them. But even then, if we create healthy impressions now, what is in the conscious mind and what is in subconscious mind, all can be overwritten with time. Yes, please.
Sure. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. Can we say higher than abhyasa is sadhu sangha, and maybe you can say there's a lack of sadhu sangha in Kali Yuga?
Well, sadhu sangha is also a part of abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice. So practice of what? Practice of the limbs of bhakti. And among the limbs of bhakti, association is a very important limb. See, basically, most people think that, say, desires. If I see an object and I get a desire for it, we think of desires as linear. I am here, the object is here, I get the desire for it. Well, that is true, but that is not the only way desires develop. Desires are also triangular. So if this person has the desire for it, then seeing them I may not get the desire, but seeing the person I may get the desire. Say for example, how many people see a gym and get the desire to go to the gym and do a workout? Not many. But if you see a friend who has actually been going to the gym and they look so much fitter and they are so much healthier and they have so much more energy, seeing them, okay, maybe I want to go and also do the exercise. So in this case, what is happening is the desires are triangular. So in most cases, with respect to material things, especially Rajasic and Tamasic things, the things appear visibly attractive and the desires often are linear. But with respect to Sattvic and spiritual things, mostly the desires grow triangularly. And how many people just see a Bhagavad-gita, I want to read it? Not many. Many people take Bhagavad-gita as it is and keep it as it is. But when they associate somebody who is reading the Bhagavad-gita, somebody who is getting fresh realizations from the Gita, they are so enlivened by their Gita study. Hey, all this is in the Gita, I want to find out what it is. Then they get the desire. So the great gift of Sadhu Sangha is that it taps the triangularity of desires. So we may come to the temple and okay, Krishna, there is a ritual, we take darshan. But then some devotee is just absorbed in taking darshan. Okay, what are you perceiving over there? I also want to know what is going on. We may sing kirtan just as a ritual, but somebody else, like they are singing kirtan with such intensity, you feel, what are you tasting over here? I want to taste it. So that's it. Sadhu Sangha is a abhyas. It's a very powerful abhyas. Okay, thank you. So. Any of the ladies have questions? Okay.
If
Okay, you can.
Mataji wants to ask that, it's totally fine. No worries.
Yeah, okay. What is it? You can speak.
And also linearity of linearity of desire is affected by our raga and dvesha, right? Our attachment and aversion. So we may be more averse to getting a disease than going to the gym. So it's not in abstract, right? All these desires happen within our attachments and aversions.
Yes, of course.
Right?
So
That also-
attachment, raga and dvesha, they are both impressions inside us. And they shape our perceptions. Say for example, somebody may come to a temple and say the deities may be very beautiful. But if somebody has had impressions in their past, okay, this is all idolatry. This is all worship of idols. And we are not going to worship idols. That even if they see the beauty of the deities, they'll think these people are so foolish. They're spending so much time and energy just decorating some idols. So even the beauty of the deities may trigger some dvesha within them. So if somebody has been, say, mistreated or abused by some religious authority figure in the past, now they come to a temple and they associate with somebody who is actually kind and gentle and compassionate. But there, because of their past scars, some scar, what will happen is, think, is this just a facade? Is this person just acting nice so that they can exploit me in the future? So they'll be suspicious. So the way desires are triggered depends on the raga and dvesha, the impressions that are there inside us. Good point. Thank you. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande.
His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki.
So much of what I spoke today is explained in this book, Living the Ramayana. So this talks about the Ramayana not from some of the story perspective, as the psychological and the relational perspective. So when Ravan abducted Sita, how was he able to violate her boundaries and abduct her? Whose mistake was it? How can we ensure that people don't transgress our boundaries? When we are alone in difficult situations, as Hanuman was in Lanka, how did he maintain his morale and persist? So how to find opportunity and diversity. So about a dozen essays, 10 essays are there in this book, analyzing the incidents. And these are what we talked about, creating new impressions. These are 366 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad-gita. It's just one quote is just a few lines, and if you can read one at the start of the day, and Each of these quotes is inspired by a verse from the Bhagavad-gita. So, when we fly into a rage, anger promises us a terrific landing and delivers a terrible landing. Those who can't face books seek shelter in Facebook. In our, like today, regarding today's class, in our consciousness, what we welcome, like that we become. So watch what we watch. So this is inspired by the verse I mentioned here, 8.6, Sadatat Bhava Bhavita. So like that, there are many attractively, concisely phrased re-articulations of the Gita wisdom over here. So this is also a very accessible gift that you can give to friends or colleagues who may not be interested in spirituality. So both of these will be available outside. If any of you want, you can have it. And I'll also be available for answering questions or signing the books. Thank you very much. Hare
Hare Krishna. So of course we'd like to thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan again because he gave us a morning class this morning. This is his second class today. Yet he still has another program, I believe, at East London. And in between he's been meeting with devotees, answering questions, and then just giving us some nice guidance. So we'd like to sincerely thank you for your nice efforts. We really appreciate that. And he's also helping us to present our Bhadra campaign, which is a very important campaign because in these 2 months it is believed that anyone who distributes or gives a Srimad Bhagavatam on the full name of the month of Bhadra, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination once they give it out. And so far, the past few months, we have distributed a total of 110 Srimad Bhagavatam sets. So we have distributed 110 Srimad Bhagavatam sets, and we aim to get 230 Srimad Bhagavatam sets. And to emphasize the point, whoever distributes Srimad Bhagavatam set on the months of the Bhadra campaign will attain the supreme transcendental destination. That is how merciful Krishna is. And His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has mentioned leaving an impression out of persistence. We can leave an impression on ourselves by having the Srimad Bhagavatam in our house because we're personally inviting Krishna in His personal form, as Srila Prabhupada has put it. The first and second cantos are His legs all the way up to His face and head, the 10th and 11th cantos. But also we can leave an impression on other people by giving them Srimad Bhagavatams. So on that note, you can have sets sent either in the UK or to India. You can gift it to those who want to start a spiritual life. If you'd like, you can even give the Lakshmi in installments if you're a student or if you're trying to afford monthly installments. The sets are available in English, Gujarati and Telugu. And you can speak to Untra or myself to give a Srimad Bhagavatam. But on that note, if anyone wants to donate a Srimad Bhagavatam now for someone else or they want to take one for themselves, they can kindly raise their hands and start to break the ice. And we'll have a list here on the board of the fortunate souls receiving the mercy of Shri Shri Radhanandan Ishvara. So who wants to be the first person to break the ice? Haribol! Hare Krishna! What is your name, mother? Ujjwal Mataji ki! Okay, so we can have a second person because one is just beginning to break the ice. So who else would like to be on the fortunate list of souls receiving more mercy from their lordships? It's 175 to print. It's usually much more than that, but for this Bhadra campaign, you only pay for the printing cost. 175 pounds only. So much mercy. Huh? You want to say her name?
No, Neha.
Haribo! Jaya Mataji ki. What is your name, Prabhu?
Indayal Das.
Indayal Das. Jai. Okay, number 2. Okay, who's number 3? Is this getting exciting? Chaitanya Charan Prabhu? We want to see who's number 3? Because he blessed us with his presence, we can also bless him by really pushing for the Bhadra campaign. If you think I'm going to do a donation later sometime, now is the time. I can promise you that much.
The Srimad Bhagavatam contains many beautiful stories that have shaped the minds of millions for millennia. And Bhagavatam is recited and its pastimes are told even now in India. But many people may not be open to hear it. But if they can have the Bhagavatam in their homes, at a subtle level, the vibrations are going to purify them, sanctify them. And we may want, if we feel we are benefited by spirituality, we want others to be benefited. Sometimes they may not be ready to come to programs, but the Bhagavatam is like 12 volumes, 12 cantos, 18 volumes. It's a gift that people will not forget. It will be there in their libraries, it will be there in their homes, and that will draw them in their time of need to read it. It's Krishna going in, and they may not read it today, but later on when they feel the need, Krishna will draw them. And then that's how they will also get the opportunity to create fresh impressions. Sometimes we cannot create fresh impressions in other people's lives, but we can open the doors for them so that they can receive those impressions when they are ready.
Right, thank you so much. Very true.